My name is Keith Naughton, and I'm the Senior Director of Development at Optimizely. I design and I'll go to this mic. Right. Hello. Is this on? All right. Perfect. All right. Cool. Now it's all working. First one today. All right. Cool. Maybe you've seen me around town or on billboards. I got the opportunity to be on a billboard for Jira, and it was fun. It's a big visual indicator that you can see, and but it's only up for like 10 seconds. All right. But walking around town with my son was amazing because we'd find it and take a picture. So, yeah. I work at Optimizely. It's the leader in digital experience optimization. We're focused on helping our customers optimize the digital experiences they provide to their customers so they can experiment and outperform their customers, their competitors. So first I want to talk about things you see out on the street. This is the 15th Street steps in San Francisco. As you walk up these steps, you see more and more things. You're forced to see them because they're out in front of your eyes. And you learn more as you go up the steps. So today, as we talk about the wall of work, I'm going to take you on a journey from when we first started it to now what it's become and how we evolved on that journey. What I like about the wall of work is that it's big and it's made of pieces. And as you get closer to the board, you can see each of the little pieces that put it together. So with that, I want to start off by talking about enterprise service planning. One of my favorite quotes is, in theory and practice are the same. In practice, they are not. That's by Savage or Yogi Berra, depending on who you think said it. And the reason I mention this is because I'm going to cover a little theory first, but then mostly what I'm going to talk about is practice. And as I go through the wall of work and how it evolved and why we did those things at that time, I don't want you to think so much about what we did, but the ideas that you have and what you might be able to do next week when you go back to work, things you can try implementing to drive discussions in your organizations. So back in December of 2015, I discovered this slide share by Janice Linden Reed called Enterprise Service Planning, Kanban, Cadences, and Information Flow. This was a revelation to me. I read it every week for a year or two, and I tried to integrate it into my work. And what is enterprise service planning? Well, David Anderson says it's a way of planning, scheduling, sequencing, and selecting work for professional services, including all forms of knowledge work. Because in our industry, we actually build something out of nothing. So it's really hard to see that. It's intangible. It's not like you're working in a factory where you can see the things or the inventory moving through the system. So the reason that I created a wall with my teams was so that we could see these intangible things. Now, one of the premises of enterprise service planning is that your company is an ecosystem of interdependent services. A service might be something like IT. There's inputs, there's transformation, there's outputs from that system. So you file a ticket, your computer gets updated, and you're done. So me and my friend Jeff Zeich, we ran a couple workshops, and we tried to map out all the services at our company. And so as you see here, there's about 30 services. The ones in the middle are the ones focused on the customer, and the ones around the outside are the services that are provided to the internal employees. This talk is going to focus on this set of services, the product delivery service, basically all the requests that come in for product, the development we do, and then how we deliver that to our customers. Also covered is security and developer productivity, as these are supporting services for product services. This is the wall of work that will be covered by, that covers these services. All right. The other thing I really enjoyed about enterprise service planning was that they actually just said, here's a bunch of meetings. And they gave you the questions that you should ask in these meetings. So, excuse me. So while we've been doing Scrum for 2 years, it was hard to see how the teams all work together. It was hard to attend all those sprint reviews. It was hard to see how it all came together. So these meetings gave me some way to see how they came together. And in fact, I actually tried to overlay the Scrum meetings first onto these to see what meetings we did and did not have. So the first set are are we building the right things? So there's a strategy review that happens about once a year, maybe twice a year. And then there's a replenishment meeting, which in Scrum could be the sprint planning meeting. But that's a weekly or monthly cadence when the team basically makes sure that they're aligned with the strategy and the outcomes that the company's going after. And then they pick the stuff they're going to focus on. These meetings are the team meetings. So it goes from the replenishment meeting, which is a planning meeting of sorts, to a stand-up meeting, which is daily, and then the delivery planning meeting. A delivery planning meeting for those who run release trains would be that release train meeting. It could also be quarterly planning, or if it's a big project, perhaps the project kickoff. But this is about talking with the stakeholders and the people who are going to receive your service to make sure that they're ready to receive it when you're done and that it'll be ready for them. Excuse me. These meetings are the ones to make sure the system's actually operating well. And what was interesting to me is I don't think we had some of these in place at the time that I noticed this. So the service delivery review is you look at the service and is it delivering what it's supposed to deliver? That is it fit for purpose? Depending on what your criteria are for that service, is it living up to that service? So it's a lot of data-driven investigation into how that service is operating. The operations review is when you take all the services together and see how they all interrelate. And then the risk review is taking items that come out of the operations review that are either failing or not achieving their level of fitness, and you deep dive and improve those services or suggest changes to help improve those services. A lot of times we turn those into working groups where we can focus on solving a particular problem for a couple months. So those are the things I want to say about enterprise service planning. There's a lot more theory behind it, and I encourage you to check out Janice's presentation on SlideShare because she spends many slides talking about like the questions you should ask. And that was very helpful to me because I would actually just focus on one or two of those questions every time I'd run the meeting, and I'd keep iterating from there. So that's the theory part of the presentation. Now I want to talk about the wall of work. Because we used enterprise service planning to inspect and adapt our system, the wall of work was a way for us to take the intangible nature of our work and display it in one place so everyone could have a conversation around it. So a brief history of that is there was no wall of work when I first started. Then we focused on the discovery board. The discovery board is where there's often you're trying to understand what the customer wants. You're trying to identify the problem by understanding it, and then you explore different solutions. And by the time you're done with that, you've picked a solution that you want to implement. Then we focus on the development board. Since that work was already being tracked via Scrum, that was relatively easy to do. But we weren't connecting the two boards together. And that's what you see in the end-to-end customer board. You'll see it in a bit later. And then experimenteering, it's a word I've made up, kind of like Imagineering and Disney, where I really want people to focus on like trying new things, both like in process, but also in product. So I'll show you some fun things we've done there and ways we're exploring where we're going next. So the wall you'll see is, first there was no wall of work. And basically Scrum focused on basically a backlog and delivery of those items. So they weren't connected. We had some challenges around innovation. We were still a one product company when we started there. And then we built out the design wall, which I'll show pictures of briefly. This focused on defining the problem and then designing potential solutions for it. Then we put both the boards up, but there was a gap for 4 months, and it was staring me in the face every day I walked by the wall. So then we actually got the wall to connect, and then now we focus on delighting the customer after we've launched. So really, it's an end-to-end customer system that we've built so that we can see an idea germinate, go through the design phases, be developed, then delivered to our customers, either via experiments or rollouts. So with that, any designers in the room? All right. Oh, one. I'll talk to you. All right. Thank you. So we went after design first because, well, they weren't really in any tool. They were everywhere. This is literally the first implementation on the first day of the board. What this is it's a double diamond. So what that means is that the first diamond is divergence, convergence, and then divergence, convergence. The first one focuses, again, on the problem understanding, and the second one focuses on solution. A couple days later, it became a little neater, as you can see, and the group together gathers around the board and comes up with the process. Now, I've seen a lot of processes get rolled out over a long period of time because you write up a doc, you get feedback, you socialize and whatnot. This was the team coming together for a couple of days and really just looking at what they do, what they want to do, and putting it up on the wall. Now, what a wall allows you to do is quickly iterate. It's much harder to do that inside of a tool. But that being said, you're able to do this even if your team only comes together once a year or once a quarter because the whole team comes together. You can also do this using a virtual whiteboard. Then you see it iterating now. Now we have, what's interesting here is you'll see that names are being attached to things. And there's also red stickies that show blockers. This will become important later when we do blocker clustering. So this is our weekly meeting. This might be like 3 years ago, but it's basically the product and design teams, including the co-founder of our company, gathering around looking at all the work in discovery. And this was very helpful because a lot of work the team was working on may not have been the highest value work. So they very quickly, once we showed it on the wall, were able to reallocate or refocus people on the highest priority items. What you see behind there is what will become the wall of work. So those are mobile boards. We had moved floors, so we rolled them on down, and then we got this amazing wall. It's a magnetic whiteboard. I asked for it 6 months before we moved there. That's the lead time you need if you get a really cool wall. And then we put up that wall. And again, it's getting a little neater now. You see face magnets on the left-hand side, and this allows us to give a per-person WIP limit, which is the beginning of a Kanban system. What's really good there is you can see what people are working on, and this becomes critical later when people are working on too many things. So Jeff Zeich, our former head of design at Optimizely, said, a physical board is way more awesome than tools. We have a ton of tools. So that's the discovery board. What was really critical here is that the team was coming together every week to discuss all the work in flight and talking about how to move it forward or to stop it. And this was one way of swarming. It was another way of building community and a shared understanding of the system. Looking at the wall allows you to quickly change what you're doing and try new things. So then the development board. That's a picture of Deho. He's one of our technical program managers, and he was tasked with putting up the wall. As you can see, staring at a blank wall, that quickly became this. Now, I'm going to start talking about the different things the wall represents because the reason we did different things was because we had different problems or challenges or different things we wanted to focus on to adjust our system. And this comes out of the enterprise service planning meetings. We learned that there was a challenge somewhere or that a certain part of the service wasn't as fit as we wanted it to be. And so we'd focus our wall, basically the way you view all the work, on different properties. So at first, there's a lot of work in flight. We were having, there's just a lot of work in flight. So first thing you see is that we have acceptance criteria or exit criteria, and these are shared. What was great is you present these in meetings, people know about them, but by putting them on the wall, you point to them. So that made it very useful to have a shared across all these teams. Now, there were 10 different teams. There are about a dozen teams working on this board. So this board represents both a team of teams view or portfolio view, but also the work of each team. Another thing I want to point out is I personally like how the wall's a little messy because that allows people to touch it. That allows people to try new things. If it's really neat and ordered, I'm not sure people would use it as much. And that's one thing I want to share with you is that when you go back, just try something. You could do it very quickly and very easily. Another thing we were focused on was, as you see here, there's a swim lane of red cards. Those were the urgent items. The reason they had become urgent is because we had a lot of work in flight, and so these things were approaching their either expiration time or delivery date. So the wall worked in this sense that it helped show this and also helped us pull that work forward. So in this particular picture, the expedited work is mostly done. Another discussion we were having a couple years back was about what types of work we were doing. So in this particular case, we used the card colors to represent different kinds of work. The green represented product-led work, the purple represents engineering-led work, and the yellow cards was internal team work such as data warehouses or business systems. So this allowed us very quickly to see what our spread of work was in the system, to see if we were allocated correctly. Again, you can see this in electronic format, but seeing it visually allowed us to quickly have conversations and to just go to visit the board. Something else this allowed us to do was when there was a discussion about something we should be working on next or something that needs to be done now, we'd go to the board and ask, what things should we stop working on? So again, having this physical view allowed us to manifest these conversations very quickly. So here's the wall together. And you see that big blank? For 4 months, the head of design kept asking me when I was going to put the wall together. And so this was a problem because we weren't connecting the two services together into one end-to-end customer flow. Sorry, wrong button. 6 months later, the wall looked like this. I got to say, this wall, many of our developers, designers, and product people all work on the same floor. This is the main wall you walk by when you enter. So every day you're walking back and forth, whether it's from lunch to or from home. And so you're forced to see this. It confronts you, just like those stairs or those other art pieces I showed you earlier. Now this wall is a little neater, which is nice, a little more uniform, and there's some things we added. So we were no longer concerned about what was product-led work or engineering-led work. We were no longer concerned about how much time we were focused on internal work, and the urgent lane is no longer there because we learned how to deal with that as a class of service. So the first thing you see here is that we have swim lanes for the types of product areas, and you'll see cards that have multiple magnets on to represent the people who are working on them. When we first started, we had 2 magnets for everyone to help limit the work, and about 2 years later, we actually moved to 1 magnet. So we could really focus their attention. That doesn't mean people aren't helping each other. It just means that that we're really trying to focus and swarm on items. That would help us with a faster time to market and higher quality. Here's a thing that you normally can't find in a tool. This is an island to represent people who are on parental leave. Optimizely has a very generous 17 weeks off when you have a child, and so people would go on parental leave for several months in a row. So it'd be good to see who was off the field or on an island, per se. That helped us make sure that their work was backed up by other folks, or to make sure that projects they were on, we knew that they would not be completed in the time that we expected. Here you have blocker clustering. Who's done blocker clustering before? Okay, a few more people. So what blocker clustering is, what we would do is, if there was something was blocked, you'd put a red sticky on it. Very simple, very lightweight. Obviously, this stuff is also covered in emails and stand-ups, but it was a way that we could gather it in one location what all our blockers were. So you collect all these blockers over time, and eventually we had 50 when I did an analysis of it, and I quickly sorted them into common cause, which are things that you should be able to fix because they're either process-related or systems-related, or special cause, which are kind of one-off items that you don't expect to happen again. So blocker clustering was very helpful in helping us improve our systems. And then over here, you see an icebox and a discarded column. And this is very important. People are often wondering, how much work are we throwing away? How much stuff are we pausing? Again, it was hard to see inside of the tools, per se, but when we showed it on the wall, we were very quickly able to have a discussion about why this was happening. Some of the simple blockers, some people were on parental leave. Other ones were too much work in the system. And other times, we discovered as we were doing the work, it wasn't as critical. So the icebox represents paused work, and that happens for a variety of reasons. But the discarded column actually is sometimes a good thing. You want to discard things on the discovery side of the wall. You want to get rid of things that you don't think are going to achieve the outcomes you want. You want to stop work as early as possible. So what the discovery side of the board is, it's about exploring all your options and then determining what your bets are going to be. All right. Here's one of my least favorite walls. It's probably about 1.5 years ago. It's very heavy to me. It's very cluttered. And the tape kind of bothers me. But there's some interesting things on here. In this case, there's a string connecting cards. At one point, we were having a lot of challenges with dependencies. And again, you can track these places. You have meetings about them. People are aware of them. But in this particular case, we wanted to show them physically by connecting them with strings, which brought a good discussion. And even better, when we solved them, we'd actually cut the strings. So that was nice. So again, it brought some joy when we solved the dependencies. Again, a lot of these things we don't do all the time. We do them in moments when we need to improve the system. We do them when we have a challenge in a particular area. So one of the reasons I like showing you all these different walls is because it evolves. It evolves to solve our current problems, and it evolves to improve, to align with our fitness for purpose, which continually changes. Here on the bottom, there's pieces of paper. Those pieces of paper represent our go-to-market asks, which was great. So all the different teams, sales, services, customer success, would take all the customer feedback and compile it into either problems that we should try to solve or perhaps specific solutions. Now, we get lots of customer feedback. I hope all of you do too. But what we were having a hard time showing was how we were working on this to the people internally to us, so our fellow Optonauts, on like how the work was progressing. So very quickly, just printed up their deck and taped it below the work that was traveling along the wall. So this allowed us to take them to the wall and show them that we were actually doing this work. Again, we'd send emails, we'd give updates, but this really and easily and quickly drove home the point that we were working on these items and where they were. Here's another thing we've added, and this still remains. This is the commitment line. So the commitment line represents, let's say, the last responsible moment before we want to, if we want to stop doing something. This is when we actually put a team on it full time. Before that, the discovery work, perhaps some experiments, some user research, prototypes and such. But this is the moment in time when we want to productionize it. So at this point, it gets very costly if we want to discard this work later. So we quite literally put red tape on the board. And from this commitment line is what allows us to forecast now. And that's one of the items of enterprise service planning, was the ability to forecast work from a particular point. And that point is the commitment point, which is basically when you start the development board. So once work starts, we're able to forecast across our system about when that will be delivered, regardless of other estimates or whatnot. And then the other thing we tried, and I'm sorry, it's kind of hard to see here, is there's little pieces of paper here which represent 4 different boxes. They were basically if someone's on call, if someone's working on security tickets, if someone was working on perhaps a bad bug, and then if someone was out of office on vacation or whatnot. And at that time, and we don't use this right now actually, but we were just trying to show the other work in the system that wasn't, say, these big roadmap items that we were driving. So we're just trying to show how we were spread out. It was a way to give us a view into how we were really spending our time. So this helped us have conversations about how to improve our on-call support, how to improve quality, and items like that. And then last on this board I want to show is, besides the big heavy blue tape, you see that we have more swim lanes now, and those represent product areas. Throughout these different walls we've had, it's ebbed and flowed how many different ways we wanted to break it down or show it. Sometimes this was because teams combined. Other times it was because new teams were created or new product lines were launched. So, experimenteering. Again, I'm going to talk about some experiments we've done, some rollouts, and then optimizing our wall of work. As I go through these, again, I want you to think about things you can take back next week and try out yourself. You could build a wall just for yourself to help get clarity on a situation. You could build a wall with your team during planning to make sure that you actually understand your processes together and to align on how you view them. Because one of the things that a visible wall helps us do is make sure that people are truly on the same page and not just saying the same words. So one thing we did was, adjacent to the wall, was we'd have goals around blog posts or growth experiments or rollouts, and we'd show those on the wall. Again, this was to help us drive, to remind people that we're trying to do these things, that these are goals we set. We'd have experiments on the wall, marked here with a beaker. This was to help remind us that we should be running certain types of experiments in discovery board and other kinds of experiments in the delivery board. We had ludicrous magnets, so we would remind us to do rollouts. Anyone familiar with that song? There you go. So that's fun. Every time we'd roll something out, we'd actually sing that song. Yeah. Again, using this visual wall to remind us what we've signed up for, how many rollouts we were going after, or how many blog posts. So again, all these things exist in different tools, but really having one unifying place for the teams to come together and remind themselves what they've committed to and what they want to do. Over time, we've added, shall I say, magnets. These actually indicate different types of meetings we have and what's going to be at that meeting that week. So here you see a TLDR magnet, which was for technical design review. It's a weekly meeting where people can come and share their designs. A design review, which is more on the user interface. And we also do a PRDR, which is a product requirements document review. And we signal these on the wall so people know what we're doing that week. And then my favorite one is a bug bash magnet, which is a really big magnet. And each week we have a bug bash or two for new features coming down the line. And you could just walk to the wall and see what's going on. Again, all these things are on your calendar, but bringing it all together in one unified view has really helped us know what's going on across the organization. All right, here, this is mostly for me, but it's one of these, a podium with wheels. And it allows me to help organize the distributed members of the team, as well as present metrics and such that we go over at the beginning of each meeting. That's one thing I might have been remiss in saying is all the managers of engineering, product, and design, as well as any interested individual contributors, can attend this meeting at 9:30 on Monday, and we walk the wall. And in fact, perhaps the wall is even less important than the fact we all come together every week to discuss this. By having all the managers of product engineering and design in one meeting every week, we make sure that the teams are aligned because they have at least 2 people in that meeting who support them, whether it's their manager or their product owner, as well as their design teams. So that meeting is critical to our success. Now, obviously, everyone's remote these days, so we've made it more remote friendly. So here you see Wayland in New York City. And here you see the view of people giving updates at the wall. So what happens is every Monday, everyone walks up to the wall and gives an update, very quick on what's changed and what might impact other people that week. It's also where we quickly resolve any systematic blockers, and it's a good opportunity to notify people what's changing in production. And then this part is interesting to me. So I went home early one day, wasn't feeling well, and my product team gathered together, and they're like, we want the wall to be new. Then they gave me very specific requirements, which was neat because we were 85, 90% there, but it was among the first times that a team gathered together and asked me to change the wall for them. So I'm going to show you what the wall had been like. Here you see we had bigger pieces of paper. These are just our slides that we print up for each feature or item we're building. We create a slide at the beginning of the year to help with planning. Like, why are we building this? What metrics are we trying to move? What's the hypothesis? So instead of just writing up cards, I just print up that deck and slap it on the wall. What I like is the cards are bigger, so less work can be on the wall. And it also helps give more information to the people. But there's challenges with this wall, including if you can tell that the blue lines, the swim lanes don't align at the red boundary. Because on one side we were going after different goals or exploring different metrics we wanted to move, and on the right side was set up by the delivery team. So over the holidays, I swept the board. I basically pushed all the work to the left because we had a retrospective, and some of the work was going stale. If something hadn't been done in 6 months, we wanted to clean it up. So I swept all the stuff to the left. Let me show you one more thing here. There's also a launch rocket here. So every time we launch something new, we launch the rocket. All right, another thing you see here is we were focused on release criteria to make sure that people across all the different services that we were delivering to, such as marketing or customer success or sales, that they were enabled properly when we launched. In enterprise service planning, when I talked about the delivery planning meeting, that's really about the handoffs of your outputs. This was an easy way to remind us all the things we should do before we GA an item. And what was nice about this was it's very simple. People just check the box. And we can add to that or not. But it brought visibility to these exit criteria. we always had the exit criteria, or at least we strive to have them, but people would either forget one or two, or just or just forget to do them. So that was nice as well. So this is the really, really messy wall. And then the product team, this is what infuriated them and made them ask to rebuild the wall. So this is what we did right before this, actually right before this presentation was given a couple weeks back. As you can tell, it's a lot cleaner. It's got different columns, different swim lanes, and it shows actually a lot less work, which is nice, because one thing we've been trying to focus on is swarming. So over time, and this was 2 or 3 years of the wall you've seen, we had a lot of stuff on the wall. And one of our goals was to decrease time to market and increase quality. And by limiting the work in flight, we've done both those things. Now, again, what's interesting to me, or what I liked about the wall, is it visually displayed all this. Without the wall of work, we could keep pushing work into flight. It's easy to push tickets at someone. It's easy to add a line item somewhere. But by having this here, we could really see what we were doing, and we could really understand how we were impacting one another. Some things this wall has allowed us to do is we have removed a lot of dependencies just in our system setup. If you have a lot of dependencies, then perhaps your teams are not set up correctly. So I want to show a couple other fun things about the wall. One is you could take the wall on the road. So this is the product team at their at a team offsite in Austin, where one of our offices is. And we took all the items that we had delivered throughout the year, printed them up, and went to a picnic table, which is also an art project, and talked about the things that we would do again. And we voted on the things we wouldn't do again. And then we were trying to, it was basically an afternoon retrospective outside, which was delightful, and a good side effect of the wall I hadn't thought about, which is using physical items to help drive conversations. All right. So how do you create your own wall of work? Well, I worked with the information services team that we have, and the first thing I did for them to build a wall was just print up all their documentation. So what you see on the left are roadmap items. The green cards were items they had on flight from our wall. I pulled them off. There's OKRs on there. There's the mission and vision is on that blue item. So I printed it up. Simple as that. Basically taking the intangible electronic information we have and displaying it. And then the product manager came back and built this wall, which looks like a lot of work to me. That's what I said when I saw it. It was good to know that. But what was neat was now they can have conversations around how are these teams aligned? Can they do this work? Why are they doing this work? Where is this work in the system? So, all right. Actually, I finished a little early like I told you. I'd be a little fast. I'm happy to take questions. So the things I want to say about the wall are basically creating a physical presence for intangible items is that it helps create a conversation, helps create alignment, and it helps you continuously improve your system. So whether you're co-located or not, use those times when you get together to look at your service, how work moves through that service, and ways to improve it.